Past Sins, Chapter 8. You can't hide magic. Twilight looked on in a daze as she and Nix sat behind the apple stand where Big Macintosh was hard at work. The red stallion, in a simple but much appreciated act of kindness, had allowed the pair to hide from the crowds after the tree incident. Nix was still visibly upset about what had happened, mostly because of all the funny looks every pony was giving her. Still, she was recovering as she gingerly ate her lunch, a red apple Twilight had purchased from Big Macintosh. Yet while Nix was recovering, Twilight was in a state of panic. She kept up a calm facade for Nix's sake, but that didn't stop her mind from spinning faster than Dash could fly. Dragon-shaped eyes could be hidden with glasses, and wings could be concealed with a vest. Yet Nix had almost blown her cover with that display of magic. Every pony at the Learn and Play Day would had to be talking about what happened. Sure, it was a feat of magic Twilight herself was capable of performing, especially with her years of practice and study on her Princess Celestia. She had accomplished a similar feat of magic when she was Nix's age, turning her parents into potted plants. At that time, however, it was a manifestation of magic she didn't have full control of. Nix, on the other hoof, had just turned a pony into a tree on purpose, something that should have been impossible for a normal filly. A normal filly had turned a pony into a tree. No, despite what Twilight had told herself and every pony, Nix wasn't entirely normal. She was an alicorn, and there were only two other alicorns Twilight knew, Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. Those two had the magical power to move the sun and moon. They were immortal princesses, and Twilight couldn't help herself from wondering if Nix was the same way. Doubts and fears, both old and new, began to rear their ugly heads in Twilight's mind. Nix had come from a spell meant for Nightmare Moon, and she was an alicorn. Had the filly somehow inherited the gift of immortality? Would she, when she was older, be able to move the sun, moon, or other heavenly bodies? Would she become as grand and regal as Celestia? The full weight of parenthood came crushing down at Twilight at this moment. What had she gotten herself into? She was taking care of this filly like a daughter, like she was Nix's mother, and she was barely an adult herself. That, and for all she knew, she was raising a filly that could someday be like the princesses. How long would she be able to keep the truth hidden? Dragon-shaped eyes and wings could be hidden, but that kind of magical power? How much longer would it be before Celestia heard of this prodigy in Ponyville? Even if the hiccup with turning Fluttershy into the tree was some kind of one-time thing, what would happen as Nix got older? Would Nix's magic get more powerful? How big was the filly going to get? Princess Luna, after all, was only a little bigger than the average pony, but she was still the younger sister. She could easily get bigger in time like her older sister. Thinking about Princess Celestia, what if Nix grew as tall as her? And what about her mane? What if Nix's mane turned into a swirling cloud of indigo magic with stars like the real Nightmare Moon's mane? That was a thing you just couldn't hide. What would ponies think when they realized what Nix was? That she had some connection with Nightmare Moon? How long would it be before the torches and pitchforks came out? How long would it be before the Royal Guard was hunting Nix down? How long would it be before Celestia banished Nix to the moon? Nix didn't deserve any of that. Well, unless she was, in fact, Nightmare Moon. Twilight, you okay? You're looking mighty pale, said a deep voice on Twilight's right. The unicorn was snapped out of her spiral-hurling thoughts as she looked up at Big Macintosh, who had a moment free from the customers to check on the pair. Oh, yes, sorry, I'm fine. Just a little lightheaded. You want another apple? He offered kindly. No, thank you, Big Macintosh, the unicorn replied. Have they started the afternoon activities? Don't think so, but I reckon it's going to start right soon, Big Macintosh answered, the straw in his mouth twitching as he spoke. Saw Apple Bloom and Applejack heading in that direction. Are we still going to that, even after what happened? Nix asked, a bit surprised. Yes, we are, Twilight replied, getting to her hooves. She knew Nix was looking forward to the afternoon activities, but the greater and unspoken reason that Twilight was worried about was what would happen if they left. After what had happened, the two leaving abruptly would make her friends wonder where they went. They would come looking for her and Nix, expecting an explanation after why they left and why Nix was able to turn Fluttershy into a tree. In truth, leaving would only invite more unwanted attention, but if they stayed, they could try and act like what had happened was nothing out of the ordinary. Twilight could act like she wasn't surprised at all that Nix was able to turn Fluttershy into a tree, that it was perfectly normal. This was far from the truth, but Twilight was hoping that maybe, just maybe, ponies would think Nix was just a very, very gifted little unicorn. For the moment, however, they would continue to hide behind the apple stand, if only to give Nix a few more moments to eat in peace. I know you're here somewhere, Spy-Spiriting McSpy, Pinkie Pie whispered to herself. Eyes focused in a hard glare as she surveyed the crowd of ponies. Moving about the lunch area and exhibits, whoever had been watching her, Dash Fluttershy had slipped away once. Whoever had been watching her, Dash and Fluttershy had slipped away once, but now Pinkie Pie knew the spy was there, and she would find him or her. Itchy neck. Pinkie Pie sharply turned her head to the right and began looking across the crowd. Her vision was eventually met with a pair of brown-gray eyes, eyes that were looking right back at her. It took a moment for the other pony to realize Pinkie Pie was looking right at him, and when he made that realization, he ducked around a corner in the student exhibit's creaky knee. Gotcha! Pinkie Pie whispered with a slightly devilish grin before breaking into a gallop. Creaky knee told her that some pony was trying to get away from her. At the knee closest was the one that got creaky. It was what allowed Pinkie Pie to follow Rainbow Dash wherever she tried to hide, and at the moment it meant Pinkie Pie would be able to track the spy. Rounding the same corner the spy just disappeared behind, Pinkie Pie maneuvered through the crowd and student exhibits in hot pursuit. She caught small glances of some pony moving just ahead of her, trying to lose her. She knew she was onto him, but that wouldn't stop her. Snow Pony went about being a nasty spy-spiriting McSpy, especially around her and her friends. Creaky knee front left, creaky knee front right, creaky knee front right, creaky knee back left, creaky knee front right, twingy ankle. Pinkie Pie put all four of her hooves to the ground, braking hard and sliding to a stop. Twingy ankle. Now the spy wasn't running. The spy was hiding. Pinkie's eyes narrowed, finding herself on one side of the food court that had been set up for the learn and play day. There were ponies at almost every table, eating their lunches while other ponies mingled about, talking and laughing. Oh, he's good, but hide and seek is one of my favorite games, Pinkie Pie whispered before taking in a deep breath and shouting, You hear that? I'll find you! All the ponies who had been eating their meals and chatting turned to look at Pinkie Pie, most quite startled by the pink pony's sudden and very loud proclamation. Still, Pinkie Pie ignored the stares as her eyes scanned the crowd, eventually taking sight of a pony sitting alone at a table who had not turned around, eyes falling back at the back of his slicked-back navy blue mane. Gotcha! Again! Pinkie Pie hissed with a menacing grin. She moved across the food court slowly, stepping between ponies as she did her best to approach the spy from behind. She was within a few tables when a face popped in front of her. Oh, there you are, Pinkie Pie. I was worried when you ran off, Rainbow Dash said, hovering just in front of her. It's almost time to start the afternoon sports and games. You still want to help? Pinkie Pie glowered, trying to strain her neck and look around Rainbow Dash. No, I don't, because I'm tracking a pony and... Eventually, the Earth Pony pushed the hovering Pegasus out of the way, only to find that the pony she'd been creeping up on had vanished. Pinkie grunted in aggravation, turning an accusing glare onto Rainbow Dash. And you let him get away! Dash put her hooves up defensively. Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to mess this up. Whatever it is you're you're doing. Creaky knee, front right. Pinkie Pie's frown quickly turned back into a sinister smile, her head turning in another direction. Don't worry about it, Dashie. Now the spy's turning away from me again, and no pony can run away from Pinkamena Diane Pie. Dash cocked an eyebrow. Wait, you're still chasing this imaginary spy? Pinkie Pie, however, offered no answer as she galloped across the food court. She caught sight of a navy blue tail ducking behind the front door of the schoolhouse, and the earth pony broke into a full sprint to catch up. She leapt around the corner, eyes darting about to see where the other pony went. Creaky knee, front right, twingy ankle. Oh, you silly spy. You thought you could hide in the schoolhouse, but no pony can hide from me, Pinkie Pie said as she moved to the school's front door. Once she was standing on the school's front step, Pinkie Pie charged at the door, bursting through with a resounding crash. She then somersaulted once before jumping up onto her back hooves, pulling a few karate poses as she shouted into the dark. Come out now, Spy Sparting McSpy! I know you're in here, and you're gonna tell me why you're being such a big meanie and spying on me and my friends. Enough of this! A voice snarled from the back of the room. Pinkie Pie turned, her eyes meeting the same brown-gray eyes she had been seeing among the exhibits. Then, eyes closed, and then they reopened, a brilliant turquoise. All right, ponies, Rainbow Dash hollered over the remaining crowd. It's time for the last awesome event of the day, the tug-of-war tournament. The parents and other ponies who had come to the Learn and Play Day all cheered, having formed a sizable audience around 3 different colored tug-of-war ropes. So here's how it's gonna happen. There are teams of 4, and each team has been placed on our tournament roster. There are also 3 age groups, and the teams will fit into the age group of its oldest member. The last team standing on each group will get prizes, and then we'll let the top teams tug it out to see which one is the tug-of-war champion of the day. Now, teams, report to the colored rope you were assigned, and let's get tugging. The fillies and colts all cheered, the large group dividing itself as the teams separated themselves into their age groups. At the red rope, for the youngest age group, Rarity stood with a clipboard floating gently in front of her. Cheerily had the middle age group, and Applejack was keeping the oldest of the school-age ponies in line. All right, Rarity said in a sing-song manner above the little fillies and colts that had crowded around her. First up are the Cutie Mark Crusaders versus the Carrot Clan. Those 2 teams get to your sides of the rope, and every pony else, stand back, please. The young ponies followed her directions. On one side of the rope were 3 colts and a filly, all of them with some kind of carrot-themed cutie mark, who took up the rope in their teeth. On the other side of the rope, the 4 fillies wearing bright red cutie mark crusader capes got in line. Sweetie Belle was in the front, Scootaloo behind her. Nix, who had been officially inducted into the Cutie Mark Crusaders just after the Spring Festival, took up the 3rd position. Apple Bloom is at the end, acting as the team's anchor. Now, while I suggested that having a rope to pull across a line would have been much cleaner and safer, Rainbow Dash saw fit to use mud pits. Something about it being easier to keep track of winners, Rarity mused as she looked over the colts and fillies she would be refereeing. Now, the goal is to pull all members of the other team into the mud pit. The rules are simple. If your team as a whole lets go of the rope and gets pulled into the mud, then you lose. Magic is not allowed, and Pegasi must keep their hooves on the ground. Every pony understand? Rarity asked. The 2 teams nodded their heads in agreement, already starting to pull the rope taut between them. And remember, there is a wash station set up if you lose, but, well, every pony just try their best and have fun, okay? The 2 teams both stared at each other, ready to begin, and Rarity didn't waste another moment. Ready, set, go! The 2 teams tightened their jaws and pulled on the rope, struggling to drag the other team far enough to get the other team into the mud pit. For a moment, the Carrot Clan team had the advantage. managing to pull the Crusaders a few steps forward. Yet the tides turned when Scootaloo began flapping her wings while keeping her hooves on the ground. The added force let the Crusaders regain their footing, and soon, with a few hard pulls and force flashes from the other team, they had won the first match. Yay! Cutie Mark Crusader Tug-of-War champions! Oh, the four cheered in unison before they stepped away from the rope, letting the next two teams approach. The Cutie Mark Crusaders won 2 more rounds before they reached their age group's final match, and the Crusaders couldn't be happier with who they were facing. Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon had gotten 2 of the strongest colts in their age group on their team, and they reached their final match by relying on those 2 colts. Still, the Crusaders weren't about to lose to the fillies, who regularly called them blank flanks, and Nick still had a score to settle with Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon for the Everfree Forest prank. Ready, set, go! Rarity shouted, and the 2 teams pulled the rope taut. Almost immediately, the 2 colts on the other team began dragging the Cutie Mark Crusaders forward. There were colts just barely in the youngest age group, which gave them a significant advantage over the Crusaders. Come on! Pull! We are! Scootaloo grunted back. But our hooves are slipping! Looks like you 4 are going to be losers and blank flanks, Diamond Tiara heckled with a laugh, taking her mouth off the rope and allowing the older 2 colts on the team to do all the work. We're not losers! Sweetie Belle shouted as she dug her hooves into the ground, finally halting her team's slow defeat just before she would have fallen into the waiting mud pit. Ever, pony? Apple Bloom said through the rope in her teeth. Pull hard together. Ready? Pull! The 4 Crusaders put their weight into the unified tug and actually managed to regain some ground, each taking a single step back. Once more, Apple Bloom called out, Ready? Pull! And again the fillies were able to reclaim a single step, slowly dragging back the older colts. For the first time in the tournament, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon had to help the 2 colts on their team. They weren't much help. But it was enough to halt the Crusaders, but not before Crusaders had regained the ground they had lost. It was then that the 2 teams entered into a tense stalemate. Neither team was able to gain an inch. Even Apple Bloom's tactic was rendered useless. Diamond Tiara's team had figured out a counter strategy of pulling on the rope whenever Apple Bloom shouted pull. Sure, both teams broke down to pulling on the rope with all their strength, so hoping to win the competition through brute force alone. This strategy, however, started to take its toll. My jaw is starting to hurt, Sweetie Belle mumbled out. Just hold on. We can win this, Scootaloo said, trying to pep up the team as she flapped her wings as quickly as she could. Apple Bloom nodded, huffing through her nostrils. Yeah, we just gotta keep pulling. No, we don't, Nix grunted as the Crusaders began to lose a little of their hard-earned ground. You better not be saying we should give up, Nix, Apple Bloom grumbled. I'm not, Nix stressed. I'm just saying we can't overpower them. We have to outthink them. And just how are we supposed to do that? Apple Bloom asked. Nix started whispering, her voice just loud enough for her friends to hear. This small idea Nix had was soon formed into a plan by Apple Bloom, who conveyed the strategy to the other Crusaders. Then, when every filly was ready, Apple Bloom began to count. 3, 2, 1, pull! Apple Bloom shouted through the rope in her teeth. Diamond Tiara's team, hearing this, quickly pulled, trying to counteract the rallied tug the Crusaders were about to perform. The Crusaders, however, did not pull back. Instead, they let Diamond Tiara's team have some slack. The sudden lack of opposition threw Diamond Tiara's team off, causing the colt they had in the back to trip over his own hooves and fall to the side. This was one the Crusaders had been hoping for. Apple Bloom shouted out another, pull! And with one of the 2 big colts off his hooves, the 4 fillies were able to pull the entire team into the mud puddle with a resounding splash. March over! The Cutie Mark Crusaders win! Rarity sung out to the cheers of the crowd. No! Diamond Tiara cried out in anger as she tried to stand up in the mud pit. We were supposed to win! Diamond Tiara then tried to stomp her hoof in protest, but the slick mud beneath her caused the filly to lose her balance and fall back into the ground. Diamond Tiara's minor tantrum, however, only made the victory sweeter for the 4 Cutie Mark Crusaders. The fillies then shared a victory high hoof and then went to where Rainbow Dash hovered so that they could wait for the other age groups to finish. "All right, it's time for our awesome championship round," Dash announced to the applause of the crowd. The crowd had been gathering to the one remaining tug-of-war rope, where Rainbow Dash was hovering above. "It's gonna be between the Cutie Mark Crusaders and the Boulders." Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, Scootaloo, and Nix all looked wide-eyed at their opponents. By some luck, they had managed to beat the middle-aged group champion team, but now the 4 little fillies were facing the Boulders, a team of 4 colts that were very close to being considered young adults. "Now, since one team has an obvious advantage," Dash said, motioning to the 4 earth ponies of the other team, "we'll allow the Cutie Mark Crusaders to have an advantage. They can either add another pony to their team, have one unicorn use magic, or pick a pony from the Boulders to sit out." The Crusaders huddled up, and Applebloom quickly offered her position. "We should ask my big sister to join our team. No, wait. We should ask Big Macintosh to be on our team. I bet he could beat those 4 big ponies all by himself." "No, I want to beat these colts ourselves," Scootaloo argued, taking a moment to poke her head out of the huddle, and glared at the other team before looking back at her friends. "I say we make the biggest of them sit out. It'll be 4 versus 3. "What about magic?" asked Sweetie Belle. "I'm not good at it, but Nix is really good at it. She turned Fluttershy into a tree." "You heard about that?" Nix asked, a bit embarrassed. "Hard not to, considering every pony here saw the tree. Still, I think Sweetie Belle's right." "I don't know," Applebloom said hesitantly. "Nix, do you have enough magic?" "I don't know. Maybe, I guess." "Come on, Applebloom, just think about it. The 4 of us beating the 4 of them without any help. It'd be so awesome." Applebloom smiled a little. "Well, I guess it would be cool, and it's not really like we got anything to lose. We already beat Diamond Tiara, and seeing her fall in the mud was all I really wanted to get out of this here tug-of-war thing." "All right, it's decided. Nix will be our anchor and use her magic," Scootaloo concluded. The Crusaders ended their huddle and told Rainbow Dash their choice. Rainbow echoed their choice to the crowd, and most of the ponies cheered at the team's courage, while one particular purple unicorn looked a little anxious. The 4 nearly full-grown stallions on the other team took the rope in their mouths, smiling like they had already won. Sweetie Belle, Applebloom, and Scootaloo took up the rope as well, biting down hard as they prepared for what was going to be a very hard match to win. Nix stood at the end, gripping the very end of the rope with her teeth. Her horn was also growing a little as she used magic to try and keep the team's hooves from sliding. "All right, is every pony ready?" Dash asked, looking at the 2 teams. They all gave a nod with a smile. Rainbow Dash lifted a hoof high into the air. "Ready, set, go!" Splash! Sweetie Belle was down within moments of the match starting. All it had taken was a sound tug from the big stallions on the other team to send her falling into the mud pit. The rest of the Crusaders tried their best to pull back, but the match had become one-sided. Even with Nix enchanting her team's hooves to hold tighter onto the ground, the Boulders were able to drag them forward with little difficulty. Splash! Scootaloo crashed face first into the mud pit right beside Sweetie Belle, who had just managed to get out of the way. Splash! The older colts were grinning, finding some perverse joy in sending 4 little fillies crashing into the mud. With the 3rd splash, Applebloom had joined Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle, leaving Nix alone on the rope. Her hooves were sliding across the ground, the other team dragging her closer and closer to the mud. Nix, for a moment, considered just letting go and giving up. After all, what hope did she have to beat the 4 big colts? "Come on, Nix!" Applebloom called out as she clambered out of the mud. "Use some more magic. "Yeah, don't let them beat you," Scootaloo shouted. She also stomped her hoof, but regretted that action as she splashed some more mud onto her face. Nix was in a panic. She tried to stop the other team from pulling her closer to the pit. The spell she had cast on her friend's hooves had been working, but it hadn't been enough to stop the other team. Now she was all alone against four big colts, and she honestly didn't think she could win. She even considered letting go of the rope. After all, she didn't want to fall in the mud either. Still, with her friends cheering, Nix found she just couldn't give up. She didn't want to let her friends down, but the task in front of her was daunting. Yes, she had an advantage over the colts because she had magic, but how could she use it? She couldn't do anything too complex, or else she'd lose concentration and be pulled off her hooves. She also couldn't just pull harder because her hooves were sliding across the ground as it was. What she needed was traction and strength. Also, one of the spells had to be something that didn't need to be sustained. A spell that could be cast once and forgotten about because she wouldn't be able to concentrate on more than one spell at a time. The mud pit was drawing closer. The older colts on the team were all wearing smiles, playing with Nix as they inched her closer and closer to the pit. Most of the crowd had given up cheering and was now waiting for the inevitable. Still, and those who were still cheering were supporters of the Boulders. The only ones still cheering for Nix were Sweetie Belle, Scootaloo, and Apple Bloom. Nix tightened her grip on the rope, despite the tightness already present in her jaw. The first thing she needed to do was to stop the other team from pulling her closer to the pit. Horn glowing, Nix shut her eyes and cast her first spell with a flash. Her hooves became rooted to the ground. The older colts were caught off guard by the sudden stop, but couldn't process what had happened before Nix began to shift her magic. With the first spell cast, Nix began to pour the mystical energy into herself, bending the magic from her horn down into her legs and jaw. Nix could feel it working almost immediately. She could feel herself getting just a little stronger as her body became fueled by the magic. Her jaw no longer hurt, and with her grip on the rope secured, she lifted one of her hooves and revealed the effect of her first spell. She had transfigured some of the dirt on the ground into horseshoes with long cleats, which kept her from sliding. With magic coursing through her body and her eyes shut tight in concentration, Nix took a step back and began to pull. The rope gave a little, just enough to let Nix know that what she was doing was working, and all she needed was more magic. Calling on her horn, Nix began pouring as much magic as she could into her little body, feeling it giving her strength. It also made her mane and tail tingle, as if they had fallen asleep, but the filly couldn't focus on that. She had to focus on her legs, taking one step after another. The other team offered valiant resistance and at times were able to stop Nix, but the tide of the match had turned. Soon Nix's ears were greeted with four sounds. Splash, 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 splash. The moment Nix heard the fourth splash, she dropped the rope and released her magic. Panting heavily as she stared at the grass, the magic began to evaporate, and Nix felt sore all over, her jaw especially tender. Still, despite her exhaustion, Nix smiled. She had beat the big ponies all by herself, and now every pony wouldn't just think of her as the coward, the crybaby, or the teacher's pet. Maybe they would start cheering for her and think she wasn't a loser anymore. She'd get a first-place ribbon just like her friends, and it was then that Nick noticed the crowd's silence. Looking up, she was surprised to see that every pony was staring at her, many with their jaws hanging open. Nix even caught sight of Twilight, who looked like she was about to faint as her eyes darted around the crowd. It was like she was expecting something bad to happen. The unpleasant silence sank into Nix, and she wondered if she had done something wrong. She began to shrink back, starting to tear up and sniffle. Every pony was staring at her. Just staring. And she didn't like it. She looked around desperately, hoping to find some pony, any pony, who was actually happy she had won the match. Thankfully, she found 3 such ponies. Her friends, the Cutie Mark Crusaders. It had taken them a moment to process what Nix had done, but when the realization hit them, the 3 fillies raced forward to their friend with wide, excited grins on their faces. Scootaloo, the first to reach Nix, cheered at the top of her lungs. "That was awesome! You did it! You did it!" Sweetie Belle added as she bounced up excitedly up and down. "I don't even think my big sis could have beaten all those colts by herself," Apple Bloom commended. The cheers and admiration from the Crusaders pulled the crowd out of their stupor. Some of them applauded and offered very well-meant cheers. Others just stomped their hooves on the ground. The rest didn't applaud at all, whispering to each other quietly. Amongst those who applauded was one pony with brown-gray eyes and a blue slicked-back mane. He applauded with a gentle smile on his lips, eyes focused on the little filly. "Boy, that was crazy!" Rainbow Dash stated as she fluttered in the air and carried a box in her hooves. "I mean, Nick's beating that whole team of older colts. I didn't think the crybaby had it in her. What are the chances?" "It really was amazing," Fluttershy replied as she walked along the ground and carried a box on her back. The pair were taking some of the leftover prizes and other things into the schoolhouse as they helped to clean up from Learn and Play Day. "I wonder if every pony in Twilight's family is so good at magic." "I wouldn't be surprised," Rainbow Dash replied as she put a hoof on the door. She then entered the darkened schoolhouse. But before she could get 2 hooves into the door, she ran into something. Caught off guard by the sudden collision, Rainbow quickly flew backwards and tried to register what she had run into. Pinkie Pie?" Rainbow Dash eventually mumbled. She and Fluttershy set the boxes they were carrying down, then moved her eyes around in front of Pinkie Pie. She was standing still as a statue, in her hind legs in a karate pose, her eyes focused on the far side of the room. Is she even breathing?" Dash asked, noticing how very still Pinkie Pie was standing. "Oh no! She's been stared!" Rainbow Dash couldn't help but cock an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Fluttershy turned her gaze on Dash, using a hoof to motion to her eyes. "You know, the stare." "Oh yeah," Rainbow Dash replied. "It's what you do when you want to make some animal do something, right?" "Well, not exactly, but yeah, sort of," Fluttershy replied as she gingerly poked Pinkie Pie's hoof. "Anyway, sometimes when I use the stare, I can make the pony or animal I'm staring at just freeze up." "Wait, so you did this to Pinkie Pie?" "Oh no, it wasn't me," Fluttershy quickly clarified. "I haven't done this to any pony in years. It was only when I first found out I had the stare that I accidentally did this once in a while, but I never do it on purpose to another pony. No, some other pony did this." Rainbow Dash turned her attention back to Pinkie Pie. "Okay, but how do we fix it?" "Well, I usually just throw a bit of water at them, but anything gives the pony a little shock is enough to snap them out of it." Oh, I got an idea," Rainbow Dash said, hovering next to Pinkie Pie's ear and beginning to whisper. "Hey, Pinkie Pie, Twilight just got a letter from Princess Celestia. She wants you to plan the next Grand Galloping Gala." Pinkie Pie's eyes, which had been narrow and transfixed on a spot on the far side of the room, went wide, and in a flash, Pinkie was bouncing off the walls and ceiling, her giggles filling the air. "Oh, that is so super duper amazing! I'm going to make the best party ever! I'll make it the most amazing, incredible, tremendous, super, terrifically humongous fun party in all of Equestria! Oh, the Grand Galloping Gala will be the greatest party! Oh, the Grand Galloping Gala will be the greatest party! Hip hip, hooray! It'll be the best, all thanks to me, to Pinkie!" "Yeah, Pinkie Pie," Rainbow Dash grinned apologetically. "About that, I was lying." Pinkie Pie froze up mid-jump, defying gravity for a moment before dropping down to the ground. She then trotted over to Dash with a cold glare in her eyes. "That was not an okay prank, Dashy." Rainbow smiled weakly, rubbing the back of her neck. "Yeah, sorry about that, but it wasn't meant to be a prank. I needed something to say to snap you out of being stared." Pinkie's expression shifted from irritation to confusion. Wait, stared? Wait, I was stared? It was Dash's turn to be confused. "You actually know what that is?" "Oh, yes," Fluttershy admitted sheepishly. When I first met Pinkie Pie, she kind of, well, scared me. And I didn't mean to, but I used the stare on her, and she got stared. It was the last time she ever did it, Pinkie Pie pointed out. Unless you count today. But Pinkie, I wasn't the one who used the stare on you, Fluttershy corrected. You weren't? But then who? Pinkie Pie began, only for her eye to narrow as she turned to look at the far end of the room, intending to glare at a pony that was no longer there. It was him! Him who, Pinkie? The spy! She seethed as she trotted across the room and pointed to a spot on the floor. I followed him in here and he was standing right here! Right here! I had him cornered, but then he opened his eyes and they changed color. Next thing I remember is you telling me Princess Celestia wants me to plan the next Grand Galloping Gala, which, by the way, is still a mean prank, Rainbow Dash. Look, Pinkie, I said I was sorry, Dash countered as she flew over to her friend. But I guess you weren't kidding about the spy. I mean, it's not like an imaginary pony could have stared you. But why would any pony be spying on us? Fluttershy asked as she made her way across the room, rocking between the desks. I don't know, but I'm going to find out, Pinkie Pie reassured firmly, only for her normal, happy, bubbly attitude to return a moment later, as she bounced outwards toward the schoolhouse door. Well, after all the fun of the afternoon games, I would hate to miss the seven-legged race and watching the tug-of-war. Oh, and when I just have to play pin the tail on the pony. Pinkie Pie? You did miss all that, Dash admitted, causing Pinkie Pie to freeze up as she reached the door. What? Pinkie Pie shouted as she spun on her hooves to look at the two Pegasi. Yeah, you've been in here all afternoon. We're actually cleaning up right now. Ooh, now I am going to find that spy, Pinkie Pie declared, her eyes dark with resolve. Not just because he was a spy spiriting spy. No, now it's personal. No pony makes Pinkie Pie miss pin the tail on the pony.